Hello everyone, and welcome to Counselor Feature Friday. I'm your host, Brian Urban. In these features, we hope to give you some simple tips, tidbits, and tricks to make your days easier and your patients happier. In this feature, we're going to talk about locking the fit date for devices. This is a tool you can use if you feel that you need to um, prevent staff members from changing the fit date. This could be related to perhaps like commissions that you calculate based on the fit date, or other activities where perhaps staff members are inadvertently or perhaps on purpose changing the fit date. This gives you the ability to lock that, so only certain staff members have the ability to modify the fit date. So we're going to start by showing how it works first, and then we'll show the setup process. So I'm going to start here in a profile that has access, the ability to modify fit dates. So we're going to go into an invoice that's already created here, and we can jump into a line item here for some devices, and then we have the ability, we'll see just like normal, to change the fit date. So if there's ever a need to modify this, we absolutely can. Okay, same thing applies from the patient profile in the devices section. Because this staff member has the ability to modify these dates, no problem, they can be changed anytime. Now we're going to jump into a staff member who does not have that same level of access. So we'll jump into the invoice, same invoice here. We'll look at that device again, except for when this provider tries to change the date, they're unable. Right? As I'm clicking on this, it's not giving the ability to change this date. So it's not an editable field. The other fields are still editable if needed, but not the fit date. And we'll see the same thing if we go to back to the patient's profile and then into the devices tab. Same behavior here. That fit date is not editable. Okay. So once again, this gives administrators, owners in the practice the ability to say, okay, only certain people can modify the fit date after a certain amount of time. So let's look at the setup on that, because that key part there is after a certain amount of time. So we're going to do first, I'm in the administrator's account here, and I will jump to administration, and then we're going to look at invoice options. Okay. You may recognize this as the same area where you can go for invoice locking. So a different activity, but generally same idea in that you want to restrict ability to make changes in the past. So except for this, we're going to look specifically at the device fitting date locking. Here's the lock type where you can set this as no lock. That's the default. You can set a manual date. So maybe you say, okay, once we've reviewed all of the fittings that occurred last month, after a certain date, we're going to lock those to the fitting date can't be changed, or for last year or something like that. You could set a date. Otherwise, you can have it on a rolling basis. So you could say, all right, we'll set this at 1 day, for example. And so after a fitting date has been set, the next date, the fitting date cannot be changed. Okay, so it gives you some flexibility, or you can provide more flexibility if you wish. Totally up to you. We're going to go ahead and set this at 1 day, and then save. Now, that means that every staff member who does not have invoice override access will then have the fit date lock. So let's look at that. Where is the invoice override? So we're going to invoice lock override, I apologize. We'd be under administration, user list. So this is where on a case-by-case basis, you can say, okay, this person does have access, this person doesn't have access. So we're going to look at the provider, the profile we were just looking at before where they didn't have access, and we're going to go to the security tab. Then we'll see there is an option here for invoice lock override. This is the same tool, once again, you would use to allow specific staff members to be able to override an invoice lock. We've applied that same logic to the fit date lock feature. And so if someone has access here, then they would be able to go in and change a fit date once that time period has passed, whether you set a manual date or if you set 1 day or 5 days or 10 days, whatever the case may be. Okay, so you only give this access typically, once again, to owners or admins who you want to be able to modify that date. Now, if you make any changes here, of course, then you click save, and that person's profile immediately is updated, and so they can, in this case, would be able to modify the fitting dates straight away. Okay, so you can add or remove that access as needed. Once again, this tool is primarily used for instances where you have concerns that fit dates are being modified inappropriately or unintentionally. If you currently have no concerns about that, then you likely would need to activate this feature. Okay, but of course, if you do have any questions about this, please give us a call, email us, live chat with us. We are always happy to help. Thank you very much for joining us for today's Counselor Feature Friday. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.